And now, the star of the show, Jordan Rogozinski.
Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Jordan 411 Sports Show. Today's guest is a Hall of Fame broadcaster. He has done play-by-play with the Saskatchewan Roughriders for plenty of years. He has covered 4 breakups on national radio. He has also covered the 2012 World Junior Championships and also have worked with the Regina Pats and the Prince Albert Raiders of the Western Hockey League, and has a daily sports talk show called The Rob Pedersen Show. Please give a warm welcome to Rob Pedersen.
Thank you, Jordan. Very nice of you. Good to see you, bud.
Well, good to see you too. How did you get into this business, Ron?
Oh man, you wouldn't believe how many people have asked that lately, and I don't know why. Wildest story for me, Jordan. I grew up on a farm. I'm a farmer's kid, farmer and rancher's kid, youngest of 3 boys, and my dad worked in the NHL as well as a hockey scout around here. And my 2 older brothers were hockey players, but there was absolutely no inkling about being in the media. Nobody can quite figure out why. But from grade 1, when I was 6 years old, we had a career day, and I told everybody I wanted to be a radio announcer. And that's all I ever wanted, or a writer or whatever. And I played hockey too, but I liked hockey. I didn't love it. I loved the media. And in grade 10 at Christmas, I thought I was getting new gold gloves, blocker and trapper. And I opened it up, and it was a typewriter. And I'm like, I think my parents know where my future is here. So how did I get into it? I just went down to Weyburn, which was the closest city to my hometown, beat on the door. He said, give me a job. Like I say, I was in high school, and I worked there for 2 years at the radio station. Then I went to broadcast school in Calgary. And then you kind of covered it there in the intro. I was the voice of the PA Raiders at 20, voice of the Regina Pats at 22, voice of the Rough Riders at 26, and then spent 20 years there. And now I'm doing television every day on Game Plus, which I know a lot of people in Manitoba watch, and specifically Winnipeg, which is super cool. And and here I am today with you, and I'm pleased. I loved your interview with Josh Morrissey. Thought he was outstanding on here, and pretty big deal to be on the Jordan 411 show.
Thank you for coming on, Ron.
Yeah, no problem.
Now, you were with the Regina Pats from 1995 to 2010. Do you remember any players standing out to you, and specifically that made it to the NHL during that time?
Well, I might ask you if you think of any. They're still in the NHL. Jordan Eberle is the big one, and he's my favorite. People ask me to this day, who's your favorite Pat ever? And I'm like, in my time, Jordan Eberle, who's starring with the Islanders now. But there were, you asked that question. I should sit down and write it down. Josh Harding, goalie for the Minnesota Wild, one of the greatest goalies in Regina Pats history, probably the second best. Barrett Jackman was our captain with the Pats, went on to the Blues and won Calder Trophy for Rookie of the Year. I think he went on to be captain of the Blues. So those are some of the big ones. Josh Harding, Barrett Jackman, Jordan Eberle, Chandler Stevenson now of my favorite team, the Vegas Golden Knights. Yeah, I should have been more prepared for this. There's quite a few. And I'm so happy, by the way, that Winnipeg's back in the WHL, because I'm a long-time WHL fan. I remember the Winnipeg Warriors days, and I love the fact that I can bring, come have a chat with you guys, and you have a team in the league, so you get it.
Yeah, we definitely do. What was the transition like from going from hockey in the WHL to doing football with the Saskatchewan Roughriders?
You know what? It was very difficult. And let me ask you something. What's your number one sport, Jordan?
I would have to say football.
Okay.
Like hockey's close. We are kind of on the same wavelength there. I saw on your show a few days ago that you like football more. Hockey, you don't mind, but 10% for the other sport.
Yeah, I think, okay, I might have said it backwards.
Oh,
I'm 60% hockey,
okay.
30% football,
Okay.
and 10% everything else. So split that up between curling, baseball, lacrosse, whatever. So here's my point. I grew up playing hockey, reffing hockey, coaching hockey. Like, I consider it part of my DNA. It's like breathing to me, hockey. Football, our little town was 640 people, bud. We didn't have a football program. They had one after I left because the Riders got so popular, but I didn't grow up playing football. If we played football, it was on the lawn of the old folks' home. I didn't know anything about football. So I was hired as the voice of the Rams, Regina Rams, in 1991, and didn't really know what I was doing, but BS'd my way through it. But then in 1999, when I became voice of the Rough Riders, you are not going to BS these people in Saskatchewan.
No.
Like, you better know your stuff. So I bought Football for Dummies, and I read that. It's all American, but I still believe, Bud, that football's football, Canadian or American. And I watched film with rider coaches, Rough Rider coaches, because honestly, if you show an interest in learning, they're more than happy to bring you in and teach you the game if you're serious. And I was. So that, and just being around it. But I mean, I didn't grow up with football, Jordan. So like probably once a month doing a rider game, once every 4 games, something would happen in a game. I have no idea what was going on. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, Edmonton was here and they blocked a convert in a game against the Rough Riders, and Omar Morgan returned it 109 yards. I'm like, I don't know how many points he's going to get when he gets to the end zone. You know what I mean? Like, so it just wasn't my thing. So I learned it as best as I could. But I want to say it was very difficult, and people were pretty hard on me. I'm sure Bomber fans are no different. Rider fans were very hard on me. They're like, oh, he's a hockey puck. All he knows is hockey. And I'm like, under my breath, I'm like, they're right. You know, so I worked as hard as I could to learn the game. But hockey is number one for me.
Going from hockey play-by-play to CFL play-by-play, what was the process like to get your own kind of independent show going, the Rob Pedersen show? You
know what? People now, Jordan, are giving us all this credit for being the front, tip of the spear sort of thing in broadcasting, of going digital. And I'm like, no, it wasn't any huge leap for me. Because when I left the Rough Riders, I wasn't real interested in being the voice of a team again, or working for a radio station and hosting a talk show. I didn't really want to do that. Like, I have a whole other career aside from this, outside of broadcasting. And I was just ready and prepared to do that as the next phase of my life. And when these guys came to me and said, would you consider hosting a Facebook show? I'm like, yeah, but I just want to show up and talk for 2 hours. I don't want to do all the other work. I don't want to line up the guests. I don't want to do the social media. I don't want to do sales. I just want to talk for 2 hours. And they're like, perfect. That's all we want you to do. So we went on the air and started doing a Facebook show, and it just exploded. And I think a lot of it is because of my friends that came on, just sports people, right? Like, but big name sports people. And then I didn't have to worry about, I learned really early that I didn't have to worry about what I was saying or who I was offending or whatever, because I was my own boss, right? So, there's a responsibility that comes with that, but I don't lie, I don't swear, but I'm just me. And that's a very free feeling, Yeah.
You might have to think about this one for a bit, but who has been your favorite guest that you had on the show so far?
Of the TV show?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you the most poignant one was Don Cherry. I don't know if you saw that episode or not.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, he actually broke down crying somewhat on the show, if you remember, because he said that he thought people would forget him. Right. And he was so happy that we invited him to come on. And I'm like, you're Don Cherry, man. But it told me how humble that he is. And I'd never met him before. Like, I've always had been trying for years to get him on the air, and finally he did it. But obviously Don Cherry. And then I am appreciative of anybody coming on my show, And you're not old enough, but I had a guy today by the name of Ron Duguay, who was an absolute NHL legend in the 70s and 80s. Not because he was a good hockey player, but it was because he looked like Bon Jovi before there was John Bon Jovi. And he was a hero of mine. So one thing, Jordan, you interviewed Josh Morrissey. One great thing about the media is the people you get to meet.
Yeah.
You would agree with that. And so every day for me is a blessing. And I appreciate every single second of what I'm doing now.
How many hours of research do you put in for your show? Like when you have a guest on?
Well, okay. Not too much. Let me just back up for a second.
Okay.
For a football game, CFL game, 2 to 3 hours minimum of prep time.
Okay.
And it's a lot of work to do football. Hockey, 5 to 10 minutes. I know that sounds bad, but I pulled it off. And now with this show, it's totally different. And Bud, I want you and the viewers to listen to this. I learned really on when I was doing my radio talk show, there's a big difference between calling games and hosting a show. When people turn on the radio to listen to the Blue Bombers, they're not, I don't think, tuning in to listen to Bob Irving. They're tuning in to listen to the game. But when you're hosting your own show, they're tuning in to hear you. So you better be good and you'd better be entertaining. There's a whole lot more pressure that goes with being a talk show host and being a play-by-play guy. So there's that. But I would say, would you say watching SportsCenter is prep? Because that's prep for me. I watch 30 to 45 minutes a day of SportsCenter. I get up in the morning and I work out. Yeah, what are you going to say?
I would say that's prep.
Okay, well, thank you. So, because in my past job, I used to say, hey, I'm watching SportsCenter while I work out. He's like, that's not work. Well, actually it is. But anyways, so 30 to 45 minutes in the morning watching SportsCenter I can't watch all the games, Jordan. I'd love to, but I can't watch them all. So I'm like, SportsCenter's going to have all the highlights of what you need to see, right? And then I go and do the prep in terms of getting the sports updates ready, the curling report. I'm up on the news. I mean, I hate the fact that we have to know what's going on with vaccinations because of how it affects sports. So I need to kind of be up on what's going on there. And then, honestly, like Ron Duguay is an example today. Bruce Boudreau was on my show today. I'll go to hockeydb.com on my laptop in a commercial break, type in their name, and I'm like, oh, here's the actual facts. Because I know roughly their deal, but it's like, oh, this guy coached 783 games in the NHL with these teams. So I guess it's not as – how much prep do you do?
I do, like for you, I had I was ready within a month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I do
That's a lot.
I do a lot of prep because actually I have a hard time reading, so I memorize all my questions. So,
Wow.
yeah, that's most people's reaction.
That's a lot of work. Well, you're doing a great job then.
Yeah. Why do you call your studio the bunker? I always think that's funny.
I have absolutely no idea, and I don't even really know what a bunker is, other than
Isn't it a war thing?
Well, kind of, yeah. Like you know what it is? It's like an underground safe place.
Oh yeah, like a safe house. Sort of.
You just answered the question. You just answered the question.
Yeah.
Our show is a safe house. And I have to be honest with you. I mean, if you're ever in Regina, I would love to bring you in and show it to you. But people come in there and they're just like, wow, I don't ever want to leave. This is comfortable, because sports has changed a lot, Jordan, in my time. Okay. I go back 32 years in sports media, and going into the locker room back in the day was like the best thing. I don't think it's like that anymore. I'm not totally sure, but you used to just be able to go in and hang out and shoot this crap with your buddies, and you know what I mean? In the morning, like a morning, have a coffee with the coaches and hang out and kibitz with the players. And I don't think that actually goes on anymore. So with us, we've recreated that. We got jerseys hanging up on the walls. We've got boxes of energy bars there. We got coffee on, and it's a safe house. And people know that when they come on my show, like Mike Babcock coming on a couple of weeks ago, I'm not going to tear into you like the CBC might or CTV Newsnet, right? We're going to talk hockey. We're going to talk football, but I'm not going to make you feel uncomfortable in my house. So there's the answer to that.
Do you have any advice for me as a young upcoming broadcaster? Any wisdom you can give me?
Well, yeah, treat people with respect, which you do. I mean, obviously your calling card is your work ethic, which you've got down.
Yeah.
And just keep grinding, keep plugging away, because you're doing a digital show. I'm now doing a digital show. I mean, one of the other businesses that I have, I do social media seminars. And so many people, when they start with a Twitter account or a Facebook account or for a business, is if they're not getting the likes or the shares, they quit. And I'm like,
yeah,
it doesn't.
You can't put, like, I have so many, like, I appreciate all my followers. Like, even if I only got 10 followers, I would appreciate those followers.
Yeah, they're following you for a reason because they believe in you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's obviously a topic that we could go on about forever. I mean, one of the reasons I think our show is popular is we engage with our viewers and followers. We make them feel important. And I don't feel the teams do that as much as they used to. So there's another one. I mean, I could give you 100 points on what I do that seems to work.
Was it hard to get the broadcasting gear and set your budget when you first got started?
Well, I have to be honest. Full disclosure, I didn't do any of that. The guy that came to me and said, "Will you host this show?" He had done all that. His name's Paul Drouin. He's from Winnipeg, actually, and he owns a company called IKS Media. So that's why I said, if I just show up every day and talk for 2 hours and give my crazy opinions and yell at people and you're okay with that and you handle everything else, go ahead. But I mean, listen, you know that Bell laid off hundreds of employees a month ago. And I've had all these guys calling me radio and TV with that exact question. How did you get set up? What was the cost? How difficult was it? And I'm like, man, it was just like getting hired at another radio station for me. So I'm not the guy to answer that question. Sorry.
What was the key factor of making you wanted to make your show independent and not getting it picked up by a TSN or Sportsnet?
Well, we are on national TV now on Game Plus Network.
You are. Yeah.
So, man, you got the good questions, Jordan. This is why I'm not giving. It was not an intended thing. I have to be honest. When I left the Rough Riders, within a week, I had probably 4 or 5 offers from radio stations to come work for them. Some leagues come work for the league. And I'm like, I just want to rest, man. It's been 30 years in this business. I just want to take a break, okay? And the other thing was going to work for somebody else after the way, frankly, I'd been treated in the media business for decades. I wasn't really that interested in it. Like, I'm tired of fighting with managers of stations and program directors that I felt didn't know what they were doing. I don't want to fight anymore. So when I had the opportunity with Paul and he's like, just come in here and be you. I'm like, I don't even know who I am anymore. It's going to take me a while to figure out who I am, because in that mainstream media business, it's say this, say that. You better not say this. You better do this. And I'm like, I'll give you a really good example. And I love Chris Jones, by the way. I know nobody in Winnipeg does, but I really like Chris Jones. I'm in Florida. And by the way, I've had a charmed life. I'm not complaining. I've had a lot of great things in my career, but this is we're at a camp, football camp with the Riders. And I said to Chris Jones, he sat down at my table. I'm doing my show. He's about to go on. And I said, hey, Chris, I heard that Zach Caleros had the highest completion percentage of any quarterback today at camp. He's like, who told you that? I said, does it matter? Why is this a problem? He's like, I don't want you saying that on the air. I don't want people knowing who had the best stats in camp. And I'm like, and then there were some big name former NFL guys in the camp, and the Riders were like, can't say this guy's name, can't say that guy's name, can't say this guy's name. And I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, I felt like taking the headset off and going, you do the show, because I have no idea what you want me to say. This isn't fun anymore.
No.
So, so does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does. It really teaches me that I'm doing the right thing by going independent and not really having being my own boss.
How's it feel?
It feels good.
I know. Me too.
Yeah.
That's exactly why I'm doing it. And I have, by the way, absolutely zero interest in going back into mainstream. Like, you listen, you think no different than the people do here. Like my friends, my family, they're like, oh man, you're doing great on Game Plus, but wait till you get on TSN. Then you really made it. Wait till you get on Sportsnet. I'm like, I don't want to be on those channels because then they're going to start telling me what to do. And they're going to say, have this guy on and have that guy on and say this and say that. With Game Plus, we're available, Bell MTS Cable, Bell 5 TV, and maybe more networks coming to you guys. And we're growing. Like when we gain another state in America or another cable network in Canada, we're like, yeah. With Game, like pumping our fit, we're building something. And Game Plus wants to be Canada's third sports network behind TSN and Sportsnet, and they view our show as the anchor show daily. So to me, that's exciting, but it's just like people don't really get the concept of building something. Or when a coach comes in and takes over the worst team in the league in a rebuild, people are like, oh, why would he want to take that job? Because he wants to build something from the ground up, right?
Yeah, you're right. Well, we both are building something.
Yeah, and you're doing great with your guests. Same thing.
Yeah. How do you get your guests?
Well, I have a guest booker. He was Clark Monroe is his name. He's worked for the Rough Riders, the Pats, and the Estevan Bruins, so he knows the ins and outs of sports. And generally, I'll give him a list of guys and say, go get these guys or girls. And he does. Very few people have said no. Bo Levi Mitchell's one of the Calgary Stampeders. What are you going to do there? But it's Jordan, you'll find this cool. We were on the air for like a week, my first week. And CFL players sniffed out immediately, this is the show we want to be on. So guys that I don't even know were DMing us saying, I want on your show. I want on your show. I want on your show. And we're like, who are we to say no? And we knew that the CFL teams couldn't block the players from coming on. If the players wanted to come on, there's nothing they could do. And the players wanted to grow their brands, grow their followers, right? We take those little 60-second clips of the interviews and tweet them. Well, the players are retweeting them. And it says, so all of a sudden, all these guys that I'd never met before were writing me going, Rod, I want to be on your show. You haven't made it till you've been on the Rod Pedersen show. So this is not anything that I've done. It's been from complete and total buy-in from the sports community. And I bring me to tears to think about what they've done for me in building this show together. It's the best feeling in the world.
Well, this has been cool and really inspirational to me and to Michael too in some way. And this was really fun, and thank you for coming on.
Guys, keep in touch. I appreciate it. It's an honor to join you. Reach out anytime.